Hello students, now we will start with new topic that is about nutrient cycles. These nutrient cycles are also termed as biogeochemical cycles. What are nutrients? Nothing but elements. Here we are going to read about nutrients means there are many organic molecules, vitamins, etc. But here we are going to read about only minerals. Like carbon, phosphorus, sulfur and nitrogen. Why do we need these minerals? These are important for growth, reproduction and various metabolic activities. So these minerals are required for growth, reproduction and many types of metabolic activities. Some of these are existed in gaseous form, some of them are existed in means solid form or sedimentary form. Some minerals exist in gaseous form. We can give example from here like carbon and nitrogen. Some minerals exist in sedimentary or solid form. Those can be phosphorus and sulfur. Now, some minerals, they are just existed in the complete cycle. They are not sedimented. They just keep on rotating in the cycles. Such types of cycles are called as perfect cycles. Some nutrient cycles maintain or remain we'll write maintain the element in the cycle only. Such cycles are called perfect cycles. Means here the element keeps on rotating in the cycle. Here we can take examples like carbon and nitrogen. Carbon cycle and nitrogen cycle. Next, some nutrient cycles block the element in some places. Example, phosphorus presence in the rocks. Such types of cycles are also called as sedimentary cycles. When we are reading about these nutrient cycles, we will know about the amount of the element or the nutrient in the soil at a given time period in a geographical area. That complete knowing about the amount of the element in that particular time period is termed as standing state. While reading about cycles, we know about quantity or amount of element in soil at a geographical area at a given time period. This knowing is termed as standing state. First, we will start about carbon cycle. So, under carbon cycle, one important point is that carbon cycle is involving in respiratory gaseous exchanges. This cycle involves in respiratory gaseous exchange. Coming to carbon. Where is this carbon present more in content? Answer will be oceans. Oceans are the main source of carbon. Atmosphere also contains carbon, but not that much equal to that of oceans. Oceans are main source of carbon. Atmospheric carbon also is a source, but not the main or the chief like oceans. How much carbon is present in the biosphere? Where it is present? In the biosphere specifically, is it existed all through the biosphere or in any of the specific places? If we keep a question, where is carbon existed and how much? We can tell 49% of dry weight of organism's body is of carbon. What is meant by dry weight? When we remove completely water molecules from the organism's body, either it can be a plant or an animal, then the remaining solid part after removal of water is termed as dry weight. Next, 71% of carbon is dissolved in oceans out of the total 100% of carbon in the biosphere. 71% of total carbon is present in oceans. So we can say oceans as reservoirs of carbon. So this is responsible for atmospheric carbon source also. Means initially it is stored in the oceans. Later, when the cycles, algae, phytoplanktons, some photosynthetic bacteria does photosynthesis, then this carbon will be rotated among atmosphere and also in the oceans. So we are telling oceans are the reservoirs of carbon. So this reservoir of carbon is responsible for atmospheric carbon also. In terms of kgs, how much amount of carbon dioxide is fixed annually by the process of photosynthesis? 4 into 10 power 13 kgs of CO2 is annually fixed by process of photosynthesis. So how much amount of carbon is present in atmosphere? Only 1% of carbon is present in atmosphere. If you see the cycle of carbon, so atmospheric carbon it is taken by the plants. From the plants it is taken by animals. as food. When these both plants and animals die, then it is decomposed. When the decomposed living organism's body is existed in the earth layers, then it will be converted in some places, not in the all, as fossil fuel. We can say formed as fossil fuel. Now, this fossil fuel, it is used for formation of petroleums, etc. But we are not going to write that. So, when or after burning of fossil fuel, then again it moves back into the atmosphere. But we know that in the earth layers there are many types of living organisms like bacteria, some of the anaerobes. In the deep earth layers, some of them will be existed. So this is, we are talking about on the land. Then what about in the oceans? Atmospheric carbon is also taken by phytoplanktons. These phytoplanktons, they intake the atmospheric carbon. At the same time, by the process of respiration, they also remove the carbon from their body. Phytoplanktons, they does photosynthesis by fixing CO2. Next, in the oceans, there are some aquatic organisms. They release CO2. That CO2 is also taken by the phytoplanktons for the process of photosynthesis. This phosphorus cycle is also explained under sedimentary cycles. We have seen the source of carbon is oceans. In the same way, what is source of phosphorus? Here, source of phosphorus are rocks. So phosphorus is available to the living organism, or used to form of this phosphorus is nothing but phosphate form or ionic form. Usable form or available form of phosphorus is phosphate ion form. So, these phosphates are existed in living organisms' body in form of ATP, nucleic acids, etc. And also we can write some of the reducing power agents like NADP, FADP, etc. And also this phosphorus is present in plasma membrane also. So that we say plasma membrane as diphospholipid layer. Plasma membrane. Now, from the rocks, first, during the climatic changes, the big rocks are converted into soil. Means they are broken into pieces in course of evolution for 1,000 years, lakhs of years later, the rocks are converted into soil. When corroded into soil, the phosphates are dissolved in water. Next, they are taken by plants. So, they are eaten by animals. After death of both plants and animals, phosphate means their dead bodies are decomposed. After death of these, the formed organic matter has the phosphate forms. after death, the organism's body is decomposed. Now, phosphate comes back to soil. So this is about the phosphate cycle or phosphorus cycle. Next, about sulfur cycle. Sulfur is initially present in soil. So when water comes in touch with the sulfur containing soil, it gets mixed with water. Next, when it is mixed, it is taken by plants. The sulfur containing amino acid is cysteine. So animals eat plants. Again, when these both are dead, after death and after decomposition, sulfur moves back to soil. So this is about phosphorus cycle and sulfur cycle. Next one is nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is fixed by three different types of process. One is atmospheric nitrogen fixation. Second one is industrial nitrogen fixation. Third one is biological nitrogen fixation. Source of nitrogen are nothing but atmospheric nitrogen only. Source of nitrogen is atmosphere. So directly molecular nitrogen cannot be used. So it is converted into usable forms like nitrites, nitrates and ammonia, etc. Directly molecular nitrogen cannot be used by living organisms. So it is converted into usable forms like nitrite, nitrate and ammonium ions. First we will see about industrial nitrogen fixation. This process of industrial nitrogen fixation is also called as Haber-Bosch process. Nitrogen is fixed by Haber-Bosch process. Here, temperature is very high during nitrogen fixation, that is nearly 500 degrees centigrade, and pH is also maintained at 250 atmospheric pressures. Temperature is maintained at 500 degrees centigrade. Next, pH is of 250 atmospheres. So here the molecular nitrogen, two number of nitrogen molecules are, means they are allowed to fuse with hydrogen atoms or molecules. These are 3 in number. So this gives 2 number of ammonia molecules. Here, how many number of nitrogens, how many number of hydrogens involved? That number is very important. One molecule of nitrogen ammonia, it is fused with the carbon dioxide. Here we are considering only one. We can take 2,2 also. It is getting converted into urea compound. Now, we use this urea. It is used as fertilizer. When this was added into the soil, this will be dissociated into ionic forms. So, to increase this reaction, here other elements are also involved like ferrous, molybdenum, etc. to promote this urea formation or fertilizer formation and also ammonium formation in industrial process. So, we can say in this process, ferrous and molybdenum are used as promoters of a reaction. We have to remember that in case of nitrogen fixation, not only nitrogen is being recycled or involved. Even the ferrous and molybdenum are also involved in fixation of nitrogen by industrial process. Second type of fixation is atmospheric fixation. Atmospheric nitrogen fixation. Here also, the molecular form of nitrogen is binded with or fused with oxygen molecules that are present in the atmosphere itself. These both during thunders and lightning. They are getting converted into nitric oxide, that is NO. Oxide forms. Atmospheric nitrogen is only, means how much amount of it is fixed means only 5 to 8% is only fixed. Only 5 to 8% of atmospheric nitrogen is fixed. Next, this nitric oxide, again it binds with other oxygen atoms or molecules. It is getting converted into NO2 minus and NO3 minus. Here we have used the usable forms like nitrite and nitrate. So here we are giving the terms like NO2 minus nitrite and nitrate. This both NO2 minus NO3 minus means nitrite form and nitrate form separately when they are binded with water. Here I am not writing that symbol like plus. I am writing when nitrite form binds with water, when a nitrate form binds with water. It gives HNO2 or HNO3. These both are considered as nitrous and nitric forms of nitric acids. So this is nitrous acid, which is formed by fusion of nitrite and water molecule, and nitric acid forms. So when they become means more in number, then they come to soil in the form of acid rains. They come to soil in form of acid rains. This is about atmospheric nitrogen fixation. Third type is biological nitrogen fixation. Biological nitrogen fixation, in the term itself, we will understand that Here living organisms are involved in fixing of nitrogen. So this is by free living and symbiotic bacteria, we know that example is Rhizobium bacteria. This Rhizobium bacteria, basically when it is present inside the soil, it is behaving as an aerobic bacteria. But when the nitrogen is being fixed, at that time it will be present in anaerobic conditions, because the compound or the enzyme that is responsible for nitrogen fixation, nitrogenase, is active only during anaerobic conditions only. So where does this Rhizobium bacteria fix nitrogen? In Leguminaceae plants. By Rhizobium bacteria. This one fixes in presence of nitrogenase enzyme. This nitrogenase, it has ferrous molybdenum components or elements. Next, this is functional or active only in anaerobic conditions. If you see, where is this means nitrogenase is functioning, we are telling anaerobic conditions. But this is a plant that needs oxygen and that has oxygen. But how it is seeing, or how it is means getting the anaerobic conditions. In Leguminaceae plants, there is red pigment that is called leg hemoglobin. Leg hemoglobin. The plant is having this pigment. During nitrogen fixation, when this bacteria enters into the root part of the Leguminaceae plant, then the leg hemoglobin will be moving to that area and it removes all the oxygen from there. So that leg hemoglobin is also called as oxygen scavenger. Also called oxygen scavenger. Means it removes all oxygen in that particular area where nitrogen is being fixed. All aerobic conditions. When aerobic conditions means oxygen is removed, obviously there will be anaerobic conditions left over. During this biological nitrogen fixation, if you take the molecular nitrogen in this form, now the nitrogenase enzyme, it accommodates the molecular nitrogen. So this we can label as nitrogenase. It undergoes a step called as protonation. Protonation means addition of hydrogen molecules, or binding with addition or binding with protons, nothing but H plus ions. Then it will be converted into, after protonation, we see nitrogen molecular nitrogen form in this shape. So this is nitrogenase. Now protons are added. This one, protonation, is also included with reduction process. Again it is reduced, means protonation again occurs. So we are getting the changes in the shape of molecular nitrogen form. Again reduced. means in the final step, means after 3 times of a reduction, we have got 2 number of ammonia molecules. Now this nitrogenase gets detached from the ammonium molecules. So we can write here this one. Overall reaction can be written as nitrogen plus 8 protons plus 8 electrons plus 16 ATP are involved. But here we have seen existence of only 6 number of protons. Here some more protons will be added to separate the nitrogenase, which is nothing but ferrous molybdenum protein. So nitrogenase is a ferrous molybdenum protein. This gets converted into, in presence of nitrogenase, into 16 number of ADP plus 16 number of inorganic phosphate plus 2 number of ammonia molecules plus hydrogen or protons are getting separated. Some other types of elements are also involved. Those are magnesium. So 16 magnesium ions are also involved here. Those are also getting separated. 16 magnesium ions.